So let me begin by thanking the organizers, my young friend Vivek, for taking this initiative, very important initiative in these times. You know, the suicides that happened after this NEET crisis, cancellation of the exam, it took my memory back to the suicide by Rohit Vemula. That there is some link between these two suicides, the suicides that are happening now and suicide that happened because of caste-based discrimination. So this cancellation of papers, repeated cancellation of examination is not some coincidence. ये कोई अचानक होने वाला किस्सा नहीं है. इसका एक पैटर्न है. Ruling classes seem to have evolved a strategy as a strategy, and this is not happening only in BJP ruled states, this is happening in many states where regional parties are also ruling. In Telangana, the state I come from, there was a twice leakage of paper. So we have to rethink this, that what is this strategy that ruling elites of this country have evolved as an answer to growing unemployment on one hand, growing hit on public education system, and growing contractualization of work. I think somewhere we have link between these two things, contractualization of work, hitting public education, and cancellation of papers, right? One of the big reasons that we'll have to get into the reasons as to why there is this repeated cancellation. One big reason is, of course, excessive centralization that BJP RSS has designed in this country. No, earlier you had exams in each state. अगर कोई घोटाला होता है, पेपर कैंसिल हो जाता था, that crisis would have been limited to that state. Today with this RSS obsession with one nation, one election, one nation, one market, one nation, one tax, but there is no one nation, one exam. The multiple exams are happening. So this excessive centralization, this NEET crisis clearly shows us is unsustainable in our country, because there are regional variations, we are a subcontinent, we are a too big a nation, large population. So having one exam, you know, the entire structure, it is unfeasible. That paper leakage can take anywhere. No, this paper leakage, some are saying from Kerala, then they said Bihar, then they found someone in Rajasthan. So nobody knows, you cannot trace. Somebody is saying it's on WhatsApp, the leakage is happening. So the first point is excessive centralization in this country. That is why when constitution makers, we went for union of states with unitary features. The state should have great amount of autonomy. Education standards are also very different. You cannot compare a student studying in Delhi with a student studying in Bihar. Having one nation is one exam is one of the strategies evolved by RSS to help the social elites. That only those who will clear are social elites. By this repeated cancellation, even that is being questioned, that it is a direct assault on public education. They want to delegitimize public education altogether. So you will have to read, as you rightly pointed out, a link between NEET crisis and the social focus of NEP. What is the NEP document? NEP is a document, first document in the world. It's a very creative, it's a genius only document which gives students more options to drop out than continue education. आप 8वीं में पढ़ाई छोड़ सकते हो, 10वीं में पढ़ाई छोड़ सकते हो, 12वीं में पढ़ाई छोड़ सकते हो, और इसको कह रहे हैं कि हम फ्रीडम दे रहे हैं स्टूडेंट्स को. अब पढ़ाई छोड़ो, 8वीं में एम्प्लॉयमेंट ले लो. और उसके बजाय क्या कर रहे हैं? They are introducing vocationalization of education. Vocationalization meaning basic skill. So this has links with caste system. That the continuity between NEET crisis and NEP, we'll have to understand that it gives the worldview. NEP का structure है push 80-90% of the population back to their basic skilled jobs, push them out of higher education system, and preserve the top education, higher education for the top 10% elite, that too in the private university. So they want to finish off public education system. Two, they do not want 90% of the population to have access to higher education. Therefore, they are encouraging skill-based jobs. They are turning knowledge into information. This again has a link to third thing. NEET crisis to NEP NEP to the third is new policies that the governments are evolving. You look at the Vishwakarma Yojana by Prime Minister Vishwakarma scheme. What is that Vishwakarma scheme? They are saying we should empower our caste-based occupation. Now government will fund potters, will fund goldsmiths, will fund blacksmiths, will fund barbers. This policy was also there in Telangana government. And RSS is giving a cultural analysis of that. Why should we not celebrate caste occupations as our cultural heritage? It's a very big question. One has to discuss this. What do you do with this? The question is not whether we celebrate caste occupations or not. Whether those born into those castes, will they have an option to go for higher education? Mr. Mohan Bhagwat gave a statement some time back that the problem of unemployment in this nation is because of dignity of labor, that we do not have dignity of labor. If you are willing to do all jobs, there is no employment problem. So if you take these three things together, the NEET crisis, the NEP document social vision, and bringing back caste-based occupations, where we will end up in 10-20 years is definitely that 80 to 90% of population will be out of higher education system. It will be only the caste elites who are moneyed. This same model is present in the economy, monopoly capitalism that is being followed with few industrialists being supported. So this crisis of NEET is just not one examination crisis. ये सिर्फ कोई एक पेपर लीकेज होने का बात नहीं है. It is a culmination of a long-term policy shifts that have been happening in higher education. That entire, it depicts the crisis of higher education in India. And the suicide, therefore I am saying, also reminds of the suicide in the of Rohit Vemula. So there is a caste angle linked to this. So this is a very complex business of caste and political economy. That what kind of shift is being brought in the social vision of higher education in this country. We should link, therefore, in protesting NEET, it is not just one paper leakage or arrest of one person or resignation. It is this entire model of governance we have to. Because privatization of education is again in turn linked to privatization of the health system itself. Look at the corporate hospitals that are coming about. What is the NEET scheme? Coaching, it is linked to coaching mafia. This entire NEET leakage is linked to coaching mafia. What do coaching mafias do? It's a business model. 50 लाख लेके कोचिंग लीजिए, पास एग्जाम पास होके 100 लाख कमाइए. So this entire commercialization in any healthy society, if you take Scandinavian countries which are social democrat, education and health should be completely the public good. पूरा गवर्नमेंट इन्वेस्टमेंट से चलना चाहिए 100%. इसलिए हम लगातार डिमांड कर रहे 8 to 10% budget on education, 8 to 10% budget on health. Any developing country should have. Our investment budgetary allocation on health is less than Bangladesh. We keep comparing with China. You know how much China invests in education? It's more than 4 billion. What is our budgetary allocation on education? 2.8%. And it is lagatar kam hota aa raha. So this has something to do with also the model of commercialization of public goods. My fourth point will be, this is a dangerous model because this is justifying also corporate hospitals. कि आप पैसा लगा के एग्जाम पास कीजिए, उसके बाद you earn double the amount that you have invested. Few years back in Telangana, when students passed this election and junior doctors were posted in rural India, there was a mass dharna by junior doctors. They said, we have not invested so much of money to go and study, practice in rural areas. We want to be in urban. We want to be in metros. Nobody is willing to go to rural areas. So health jaisa ek jo basic necessity of any human society, this is worst kind of crass commercialization than even the United States. कि आप धीरे धीरे इस मॉडल में आगे बढ़ेंगे तो you will have nothing like public health system left. You will not have public education system, you will not have public health system. Again, the model is the same. 80% of the population will be cut off from public health system. 10% will have corporate hospitals which are very expensive. The same model will be reproduced even in health. And that is why you see doctors today, Nobody, these students are committing suicide to become doctors, but nobody respects doctors in the society. Doctors are being beaten up in hospitals. State governments are having to bring laws saying that beating a doctor is an offense. Why beating a doctor? Beating anybody is an offense, but you have to bring a special law because people are so angry with doctors. Today in the room, somebody was telling me that, you go to AIMS with tests from a private hospital, they don't trust the private tests. The AIMS doctor says again you have to go for fresh tests because they don't trust private hospital tests. This is the condition we are living in. That today, how many of us feel confident in going to a private hospital to a doctor? Kitna tests real hai? Because we know some very higher end doctors in corporate sector or family friends. They tell us that they are given targets. 6 महीने में इतना टारगेट आपको अचीव करना, नहीं तो योर जॉब इज टर्मिनेटेड. तो आप छोटा खांसी के लिए भी जाओ, दे विल बिगिन विद टीबी. You go with a small patch here, they will say AIDS. Thoda kuch ho, they will say cancer. They say we are ruling out the possibility. So this kind of a danger and this anxiety, the other bigger, larger issue we have to remember is crisis in public health and public education system does not remain only to those sectors. The anxiety created with health and education has a spillover effect on politics. आज जो एंग्जाइटी, जो अनसिविलिटी, जो वायलेंस, जो मेजॉरिटेरियन हेट्रेड जो आप पॉलिटिक्स में देख रहे हो, इसका कहीं ना कहीं लिंक इन चीज़ों के साथ है. आज मिडिल क्लास का बेसिक इनसिक्योरिटी क्या है? एक तो एम्प्लॉयमेंट है, दूसरा पढ़ाई का, एजुकेशन का कॉस्ट मोस्ट ऑफ देम कैन नॉट अफोर्ड, तीसरा हेल्थ क्राइसिस हो तो फैमिली बर्बाद हो जाए. दीज आर द 3 sources of anxiety in middle class and all castes. This is the anxiety you are finding in politics today. The hatred against Muslims, the hatred towards other castes, the violence that is found on the streets, the uncivility. We have to form a link between these two. Therefore, if you see Scandinavian countries or even European developed countries where health is guaranteed, if you go to a country like Sweden, public education is completely free, public health is 100% free from cold to cancer. Completely free. You have high taxes, 60%, 50 to 60% is a taxation rate in Sweden, but all your basic needs are, once they are assured, then one can understand human beings will not be anxious. Today we are living what is called a precariat life. You can just fall below the poverty line into abject poverty if you have one cancer case in your family, that's the end of your economic story. If you make people live in this kind of anxiety, one can understand why there is so much of hatred on the streets. Hatred might be against neoliberal model of economy, but the hatred is coming out on those who are weak. It could be Muslims, it could be Dalits, it could be Shudras, it could be women. And today you have a regime in the power which is harnessing those anxieties, which want those anxieties to increase. Therefore, this crisis of NEET is not just one paper leakage. It is the entire neoliberal model of development that we need to focus. And it is the left parties which have to take this responsibility of linking the paper leakage crisis to why a neoliberal model of development is perpetuating. Neoliberalism needs both anxiety and authoritarianism. Anxieties justify authoritarianism. Authoritarianism will perpetuate anxieties. और ये कब होगा? जब पब्लिक इंस्टीट्यूशंस, पब्लिक गुड्स, एम्प्लॉयमेंट धीरे धीरे घटता जाएगा. इफ यू रीड द हिस्ट्री ऑफ जर्मनी, that is the history Germany produced. That hatred against Jews was born from the economic crisis of First World War. And that idea of humiliation in Treaty of Versailles. Today you are having a similar story of humiliation with Mughal rule, humiliation in the past. You need to compensate. So there are parallels we can see. So our way to fight this NEET examination crisis is not just in the immediate leakage question or who to be arrested, but I think we need to question this entire model of political economy, model of education. Why should education be so expensive? Why do you need this entire coaching mafia? In coaching, there's no education that happens. It's all rote learning, it's all about techniques, how to do fast, how to click the correct key, how to get the correct choice. So third aspect is the nature of exam. All these exams are objective type. Now they are saying we'll make it computer based. How can you have entire knowledge reduced to objective type questions? That is why this leakage is also possible, because if you just leak the key, that is where you get all the multiple choices. So we have to also question the nature of examination. What is this nature of examination? People have to just get those certain questions right, objective type, you are in. If you don't get those questions right, you are out. And this is happening even with Central University entrance examination. It's all objective based. And what is one of the questions in nature of questions? One of the questions this time in UGC NET and entrance examination is, how many times did Prime Minister Modi visit United States? 21, 23, 24, 25. This is the multiple choice here. So fellow who kids 21 is in, fellow who kids 25 is out. But इसको कोई लॉजिक, कोई मेथड, कोई मतलब मीनिंग है एजुकेशन से? It's just reducing, and this we should understand is in the right wing's understanding of education. They want to reduce education to information and basic skills. Information is knowledge for them. कितने MPs है पार्लियामेंट में, MPs क्या करते वो नॉलेज नहीं है. कितने MPs है? 500, 520, 513, 555. If you know this knowledge, and it's about basic skills, vocationalization, basic skills of. So this is a long struggle we have regarding NEET, and I will conclude by raising few questions for left parties that you need to rethink. Is that crisis after crisis in this country, there are no mass protests. Why? इतना बड़ा MNREG का withdrawal हुआ, there is no mass protest. We are talking about big time vote chori, there is no mass protest. Today there is NEET crisis leading to suicide of students, but people are not willing to come onto the streets. Why? This is a big question we need. What has changed in the dimension of protest politics, that after neoliberal reforms, the dynamics of politics has also changed in a very fundamental way. I don't have the time to explain the detail, but the transactional character of politics that has entered without social vision. That's where left parties are still very different, because they're ideological oriented. They're still talking about the large issues of political economy, the structural questions. But the problem with talking about those abstract structural utopian vision is, it is not connecting to the common people. This is a strange dilemma that we are facing. That entire political process has become about service delivery, immediate benefits, direct cash transfers. Beyond this, people are not being able to mobilize. Otherwise, vote chori is such a big crisis that parliamentarians tell us, sir, you're all protesting on vote chori. We have to find a reason why there has not been a single dharna on vote chori. In West Bengal, we are told 27 lakhs have been deleted, out of which, forget Muslims because they might be scared, 18 lakhs we are told are Hindus. Where are those Hindus on the streets? Why nobody is protesting against loss of vote? Either people are not bothered about voting right, or there is something else that is preventing them. But this waiting game that opposition parties are playing, some point there will be a sudden eruption of anger on the streets, is looking increasingly difficult. So we would also have to collectively think through sessions and meetings like this, not just to criticize the government. That is one part which we will anyway do. But where are we failing? Why is that in spite of repeated failures of this government on almost all fronts, on the front of economy, on the front of law and order, on the front of caste question, on the front of gender question, you are not seeing mass anger on the streets. Nothing is spilling over onto the streets. So I don't think India will naturally end up with Nepal or Bangladesh or Sri Lanka kind of mass protest. There is something else happening on the ground. Is it the cultural narrative? Is it the Hindu mobilization, Hindu consolidation? Why is it that such a severe issue? I think 20, 30 years back, if there were such series of suicide of young people, there have been huge mass protests. Today people are desperate, people might be unhappy, but they are not willing to protest. Why? Is it the character of the middle class that has changed? Is it the trust in a Hindu nation that is holding them back? Is it that the character of middle class has transformed so much that they are bereft of any social ethics? that they are so indifferent to the social and political processes that they are not able to respond to their own suffering. Even today they are not willing to blame the government. Even today they are not saying that this government, there should be resignations, we should withdraw support to this government. They are unhappy, but that shift is not happening. Why? I think meetings of this kind, we should collectively sit and also do some brainstorming, that something fundamental is changing in the way people are responding. I think, as I said, one of the immediate reasons that I can trace is the transactional character. After neoliberal reforms, there is a quid pro quo relation that is happening between the governors and the governed, that they feel that here are the immediate deliverables. State is not responsible for any long-term goal. Entire economy is going, something else is responsible but not the leader. Something else is responsible but not the political party in power. This kind of a disjunctured cognitive dissonance that has happened, I think is a big challenge for left parties especially to struggle. I hope meetings of this kind in the future will be able to revisit some of these fundamental changes that are happening and connect some of these immediate crises to some long-term struggles. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.